Your water filter has an expiry date, and the company that sold it is counting on you not to notice. Picture this: a grid-down morning, no municipal pressure, the tap running brown for 30 seconds before it stops altogether. You reach under the sink for your backup unit and you find a cartridge light blinking red. Spent, depleted, useless. The smell coming off that standing water in the bucket is somewhere between wet earth and something older, something wrong. 3 days. That is the window most survival manuals give untreated surface water before waterborne illness becomes a real and present threat. 3 days is not a long time when the store shelves are bare and the delivery trucks aren't running. What you need right now is something that doesn't run out, doesn't need a replacement part, and doesn't require electricity to function. The Mesopotamians had it. They built it from clay dug out of riverbanks, fired it in open kilns, and used it to supply drinking water to cities that housed tens of thousands of people. That technology didn't disappear. It was buried under a century of marketing. You are about to dig it back up. The modern filtration industry is built on a subscription you never consciously signed. Replacement cartridges for a mid-range undersink reverse osmosis system run between $200 and $400 per year, depending on your water quality and usage. The filters themselves are engineered with a functional lifespan, typically 6 to 12 months, after which flow rate drops, contaminant rejection falls, and manufacturers recommend immediate replacement. What they do not tell you in the product literature is that the activated carbon block at the heart of most consumer filters begins losing efficiency against volatile organic compounds within the first 90 days of use. The pores clog. The surface area saturates. Why? The filter becomes a slow drip of false confidence. And when the grid goes down and the replacement filter isn't coming, that unit becomes decorative plastic. That is not preparedness. That is dependency with a retail price. The Mesopotamians of the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley were producing fired ceramic vessels specifically designed for water clarification as far back as 4,000 years ago. Archaeological excavations at sites along the ancient Iraqi floodplain have recovered ceramic storage vessels with wall porosity patterns inconsistent with standard food storage pottery. The pore structure was intentional, engineered to allow slow water passage while trapping sediment and biological material. These were not crude pots. They were the product of generations of empirical refinement, built by people who understood, without the vocabulary of microbiology, even that slow passage through the right material produced water that kept people alive when the river water alone did not. To understand why ceramic works at a fundamental level, you need to understand mechanical filtration, which is the physical process of forcing water through gaps so small that particles, bacteria, and protozoa cannot pass through. The unit of measurement here is the micron, which is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. For context, a human hair is approximately 70 microns wide. The bacterium Escherichia coli, one of the most common waterborne pathogens, measures between 1 and 3 microns. Giardia cysts, the protozoan responsible for the intestinal illness giardiasis, measure between 8 and 18 microns. A properly fired ceramic filter pot produces pore sizes in the range of 0.6 to 3 microns. That means the ceramic wall is physically too tight for most bacteria and all protozoa to pass through. They are not chemically neutralized. They are geometrically excluded. They cannot fit. This is not a reaction that degrades over time. The ceramic matrix does not saturate the way carbon does. The physical structure remains intact as long as the pot is intact. Think of it like a well-used terracotta pot sitting on a workbench. You have seen water wick through the walls of unglazed terracotta slowly, leaving the outside damp while the inside holds liquid. That weeping is not a flaw. It is the pore structure doing exactly what a ceramic filter does. I'm moving water molecule by molecule through a labyrinthine microscopic passageway while anything larger than those passages stays behind. The slower the flow, the tighter the path, the more complete the filtration. The ceramic filter pot is that terracotta pot, engineered deliberately. The mechanical barrier is only the first line of defense. Here is where the ceramic pot stops being a passive barrier and becomes something closer to a living organ. Over time, typically within the first 2 to 4 weeks of continuous use, the outer surface of the filter develops what microbiologists call a Schmutzdecke, from the German meaning dirty cover, which is a thin biological layer of beneficial microorganisms that colonize the porous ceramic surface. These organisms, primarily predatory bacteria and protozoa, feed on the pathogens that the mechanical barrier has trapped against the ceramic wall. They are not contaminants. They are allies. In slow sand filtration, the engineered municipal water treatment process that has been used in Europe since the early 1800s operates on exactly this principle at city scale. The World Health Organization formally recognizes the Schmutzdecke as a primary pathogen reduction mechanism in biosand and ceramic filtration systems. What this means practically is that a ceramic filter improves in performance the longer it is used. A modern carbon cartridge degrades from day one. A ceramic filter, properly maintained, matures. What you need to build one is achievable with materials that exist in most rural and semi-rural environments. The primary component is uncontaminated plastic-free clay, not commercial potting clay, which contains additives, but raw natural clay dug from subsoil, at least 30 centimeters below topsoil to avoid surface contamination. The second component is a combustible organic material. Rice husks, sawdust, or dried and ground straw work equally well. The organic matter burns out during firing, leaving behind the pore structure. The ratio is critical. By volume, the mix should be 50% clay to 50% combustible material. This is not approximate. This ratio has been tested in humanitarian manufacturing programs and produces the target pore size range. The third and optional but strongly recommended component is colloidal silver, a suspension of silver particles in distilled water, brushed onto the fired pot's inner and outer surfaces. Silver's oligodynamic effect, meaning its toxic action on microbial cells at very low concentrations, has been documented since the 1800s and provides a secondary layer of pathogen kill for viral particles that mechanical filtration alone cannot stop. A small bottle of colloidal silver costs under $15 and treats multiple filter pots. To make the filter, start by sourcing your clay and performing a basic sedimentation test. Mix a handful of raw clay into a jar of water, shake it, and let it settle for 24 hours. If the settled layer is uniform and dense with minimal sand separation, the clay plasticity is sufficient. Then dry the raw clay completely. Sun drying for a minimum of 48 hours in direct sunlight works. Before grinding it to a fine powder, combine 50% powdered clay with 50% fine dry sawdust or rice husk ash by volume in a large container. Add water incrementally. You mixing by hand until the material reaches the consistency of stiff bread dough, firm enough to hold its shape when pressed but pliable enough to form without cracking. Form the filter by pressing the clay mixture into a smooth-sided bucket mold, or by hand building upward from a flat, circular base, working the walls to a consistent thickness of no less than 1 centimeter and no more than 1.5 centimeters. Thicker walls reduce flow rate below a functional level. Thinner walls compromise structural integrity and pore consistency. Allow the formed pot to dry slowly in shade, not direct sun at this stage, for a minimum of 72 hours to prevent surface cracking. Once leather hard, it is ready for firing. Fire the pot in a wood-burning kiln or a well-ventilated open fire pit. Bringing the temperature up gradually over 90 minutes to a target of between 800 and 900 degrees Celsius. A bright orange-red glow in the kiln interior indicates you are in the right range. Maintain that temperature for a minimum of 2 hours. Here, stay clear of the firing area once the combustibles begin burning off. The smoke produced as the organic material burns out is significant, and working upwind is the right instinct. Allow the pot to cool completely inside the kiln. Never quench a hot ceramic piece with water, as thermal shock will crack it. Once cool, apply colloidal silver using a clean brush in 3 successive coats to both inner and outer surfaces, allowing each coat to dry fully before applying the next. Place the finished pot inside a clean covered collection vessel, a food-grade plastic or stainless container slightly larger than the pot, and run clean water through it continuously for 5 days before using the filtered output for drinking. This conditioning period initiates the Schmutzdecke and flushes any residual firing particulate from the ceramic matrix. Performance data from peer-reviewed field studies is direct and repeatable. A ceramic filter pot manufactured to the 50-50 clay-to-burnout ratio and fired to the correct temperature range achieves bacterial removal rates of 97.8% to 99.9% in independently tested samples. That figure comes from studies published in the journal Water Research and replicated across humanitarian deployment programs in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. Flow rate through a properly fired pot averages 1 to 3 liters per hour, all which is slower than a reverse osmosis unit running on mains pressure but entirely functional for a household producing 8 to 12 liters of drinking water per day. For Giardia and Cryptosporidium, the two protozoan cysts most commonly found in surface water, removal rates in laboratory conditions exceed 99.9%. The cost comparison is not subtle. A commercial countertop ceramic gravity filter from a reputable brand retails for between $180 and $350. And its replacement filter elements cost between $40 and $90 each, with recommended replacement every 12 months. The raw materials to build the filter described in this script: clay from the ground, sawdust from any woodworking operation, a small amount of colloidal silver. Total somewhere between $0 and $15, depending entirely on whether you purchase the silver or source the other materials locally. The clay is free. The sawdust is free. The firing fuel is foraged wood. This is not a budget alternative. It is a superior alternative in any scenario where supply chains are compromised and replacement parts are unavailable. The World Health Organization's Household Water Treatment Program has deployed ceramic pot filters in over 40 countries as a primary intervention in communities without access to municipal treatment. Hyprichiun, a 2008 field evaluation in Cambodia, published by WHO, documented a 46% reduction in diarrheal illness in households using ceramic pot filters compared to control households using untreated water. These are not controlled laboratory conditions. They are field conditions, meaning inconsistent source water, variable manufacturing quality, and real households. The performance held. The technology held. Water treatment infrastructure in the developed world runs on a chain of chemical deliveries. Pressurized pipes and powered pumps remove any single link and the chain doesn't bend, it snaps. The average municipal water treatment facility holds between 3 and 7 days of treatment chemical reserves. A prolonged grid disruption, a supply chain interruption, or a contamination event at the source doesn't give you weeks to prepare. It gives you hours. You either hold the knowledge to produce safe water from whatever source is available, or you hold a receipt for equipment that needs a functioning delivery network to remain useful. One of those positions has kept people alive through every collapse in recorded history. The other was invented last century. Know what you know, or know what to build. Your move.